Hey, so this is gonna be a battle report between Warriors of the Dark Gods and Vermin Swarm. A friend of mine plays Vermin Swarm with a list that you can see now, and it's a highly optimized list, and it's a strong list. He specifically requested me to play Warriors of the Dark Gods, and I was a bit surprised by this because, well, I had imagined that he had already realized that this would be a very favorable matchup for him. And I must say, in general, I don't like playing against Vermin Swarm. Each time I play against him, there seems to be some funky rule in the army book that just screws up the entire game. And I don't know why Vermin Swarm specifically has this kind of way of coming over to me. But yeah, I really don't like the army book, just because every single game I play against him, there's something that just deeply frustrates me about the army, which makes me not enjoy the game anymore, basically. Yeah, so without further ado, I'll just get into the game. Yeah, so this is my army list. This is just an army list that I based on the models that I could that I got for my Warriors army. And yeah, I know that there's a lot of popularity for Feldrax nowadays, and I can see why. They're definitely good. But this is my Warrior army. I'm not going to expand it any further because I have plenty of armies already. Yeah, so with regards to the matchup, I would say it's a horrible matchup for me. Just in general, Vermin Swarm are very good at dealing with armor. They have a very good ranged game, and in combat even they manage to probably smack me down quite effectively. So I don't, in my view, I don't have anything going for me in this matchup. If you just disagree with me, please convince me in the comments and tell me how I should have played this battle. So we played Refused Flank, and the secondary objective was King of the Hill. The piece of terrain that I chose was the field all the way on the bottom left, and the piece of terrain that my opponent chose was the hill partially in his deployment zone, but not wholly. My opponent, I put him in. I was allowed to choose the table side, and I put him in the lower right corner because he has the hill there, he has the building there. So I figured that I would break up his army in the sense that, well, he's going to struggle with the building. This is one of the official map packs maps for Refused Flank, actually, and I was surprised that they put this building in the place that it is in, because if you force your opponent to take the side with the building in the middle of its deployment, it really breaks up your battle line. And so in my side I have a ruins place now. That's because I have the wasteland storage. It used to be a forest. So I think it's a very polarized map for the person who gets to pick deployment sites. On the other hand, if you force your opponent into this lower right corner, that also means that he can choose to opt for the first turn, which my opponent did. So you can see him placing his entire army. So my thoughts going into this battle are mostly my opponent outranges me, my opponent outmagics me, my opponent, once I get into combat, performs better in combat. So yeah, I have to play the movement game with Warriors of the Dark Gods against an army that has light troop close combat units. Just something I have to point out right now. So the top doom wheel to the right, you can see a small marble next to it. That's the location of my ominous gateway that I get from the start of the battle. So going back to my thoughts. This sucks. This just sucks in every single way possible, because the armor that I get on my models, that should protect my models from most damage, is just being negated by all the toxic attacks, and a 5+ ward save doesn't compensate for that. Yeah, so if it had been a tournament, I would have played a very um, passive game where I would have just put all my army in the top left corner, mostly out of reach of his ranged potential. Just spawn Helmor portals for 3 turns and then see if any possibility opens up and try to get a draw. But as it was a friendly game, I decided to not do this. I decided that I would try to go for it. And yeah, dreadmills are horrific units in my mind. And yeah, it's this video is gonna contain some complaining of me about different units in the Vermin Swarm army roster, because I cannot imagine how the rules team got to develop these units. Yeah, so Dreadmill to my army, my Forsworn can't handle them, my Chimeras can't handle them, my Chariots are gonna be unhappy against them. My Warriors have too high value per model to be happy about them. And then the rest that I still have are Barbarian Horsemen and Warrior Knights. Yeah, if he's going to shoot against my Barbarian Horsemen, then well, the rest of the army is already gone, so that doesn't really matter. Yeah, so any target he can get basically in my army is a good target for these things. And any charge that I could get off on these, well, monstrosities is not gonna result in it being dead. And then with the fact that it hits me on 3+, always, all the time, with multiple wounds, and he has leadership 9 from his Vermin Lord Demon, which is also kind of weird that it can just anyway. It's a very polarized unit in that sense, especially against my army. I can imagine that it's useless against armies that don't field any monstrous or multiple wound kind of stuff. But realistically, nearly every army has these kind of models, and it's not bad that an army like Vermin Swarm has these ways of dealing with monsters. It's just that you have movement 8, you have 18-inch range, so you have an effective 26 inches range, and you can pull off a movement trick like my opponent does here to get an extra 2 inches again, or an extra 1 inch, whatever. So you get an incredible range. You have 3 shots that hit on 4+. They're accurate, so you have a guaranteed hit with strength 5 AP 10, I believe, which is also very high. And you do D3 wounds, and it's like, if you compare it to other models that are designed to take monsters off the table, they don't have this reliability built into this. And this is what I find to be the most annoying thing about Vermin Swarm. It used to be a very fickle army where either you hit or you miss, and stuff can go very well or stuff can go very wrong. Now it's just all about reliability. Dreadmills have 3 shots. They don't have 1 shot that hits on a 2+ or 3+, whatever. They have 3 shots. So by adding more dice, you add in reliability. These Plague Monk guys, the Plague Disciples, they have hatred and battle focus with an attack. So if you have a bad die roll, you just reroll, and you get your hits anyway. And you have leadership 9 with your Vermin Demon, which is rather excessive. And then, even then, you get to add the ranks of your units, and so anything, the entire army is practically fearless where it needs to be. It can still flee with units it needs to be able to flee with, if you want to field those. Any single unit in the Vermin, well, in this army, any single unit is just good. It's not even about making units work together or anything, and obviously these units in the way that they are set up do work together to make it even more powerful, but even if you don't factor in the fact that your units might have to work together, they are still good. Yeah, so I think it's, and mostly again just the reliability of it all. Like if it were strong and it could deal out a lot of damage, but it also could go horribly wrong because you have a low amount of dice, or because you hit yourself on every single run that you roll, or whatever. I don't know how you would solve it, but I think it's a very big issue for the army as an opponent. Yeah, so we go to magic and shooting. In the magic phase, he casts 2 missiles on my giant. I failed to dispel either of them, whilst I kept my 5 dice to dispel. Just one of them, didn't manage to. And then the Dreadmill shoots the giant off the table, so that's 7 wounds done in one in one turn, and the other Dreadmill shoots at my Barbarian Chariot without the chief on it. The giant, he dies, he panics the Chimera off table, so I already start with a very bad start there. On the left I try to charge the Dreadmill with 3 different units, only the Chimera makes it in, and on the right I try to charge the other Dreadmill with my Barbarian Chief on Chariot with the Weirdstone, assuming that this Weirdstone ignores the first hit, so it ignores the first shot that I get from the Dreadmill if I try to beat it in combat. And the Warrior Knights, they charge into the Plague Disciples, assuming that I still have a Hellfire bound spell that I can cast. But it's something like 15 inches, I have to roll a 7 or a 6 even, and I don't make it in. And then I'm trying to see if my Barbarian Horseman can chaff the Plague Monks to protect my Barbarian Chief in case it goes wrong with the Red Drill. But yeah, I don't really have the range, so as it's a casual game, we're just moving around a little bit, and I'm not using markers all the time, and I'm still discovering the army that I'm playing also, because especially in this matchup, it's such a tough matchup. I have the feeling that I have to put pressure on my opponent, but I can't because of these Dreadmills. And also the Plague Disciples. If they charge me, I'm just thoroughly fucked. Like my Warrior Knights, if they get the charge of these Plague Disciples, they first get 10 Strength 3 toxic hits, which is 2 or 3 dead knights. Then we get to the attacks. They go first. They have, well, forced to hit, hatred, battle focus, so they have 10 hits more or less. And that's gonna be another 2 dead knights or something. Yeah, why do these guys have flails whilst the rules for flails in the rules books have all been just removed? Why couldn't they just get great weapons, right? And yeah, seeing this game back is just frustrating again. Yeah. So my magic phase is kind of shitty because I only have 2 bound spells left. My giant is gone due to some luck on his side on the first turn. My Barbarian Chief doesn't manage to get his. He rolled Evocation as a law, so he has to reroll to wound. He doesn't get it, and my opponent convinces me for some reason that I can't ignore his shot from his Dreadmill on my Barbarian Chief, because a Doom Wheel doesn't roll to hit, because it does something else. I was quite perplexed by this, and I couldn't really believe it. I didn't really want to believe it, but I was like, oh yeah, it's Vermin Swarm, whatever. Could be right. I've heard crazy stories from Vermin Swarm earlier. I'll just accept it. Stuff like, yeah, Vermin Demon also has plus 3-inch range on the magic. Why is this? It's just completely unnecessary. Anyway, yeah, so my Barbarian Chief does 3 wounds on his Dreadmill, which is a decent job. The Dreadmill does 3 wounds back on him because he gets 1 hit through with multiple wounds D3, which I could have prevented. And later, after the battle, we go into it again and we reread that he just does a hit on my Barbarian Chief. It's at the same initiative as his grinding attack, so I could have prevented it. So, whilst now he was testing at a -1, he should have been testing at a -4. And this was, I believe I did the right move in my first turn to just choke up these Dreadmills so I could either remove them in my first turn or try to remove them in my second turn. Yeah, so this was really something that I after the battle, I was quite frustrated with this, especially since I asked my opponent a couple of times, like, yeah, is this right? Can I do this? Oh well, there wasn't. I don't know the exact communications anymore, so I'm not gonna blame my opponent for this. But I know it was incredibly frustrating to me, especially since I'm already playing this uphill battle. Anyway, so at the end of the magic phase, I still put down a portal for my Helmor just to the south of the ruins, near my Forsworn. And this place actually allows me to put either the chariot or the great weapon warriors or the Forsworn into the portal and let them pop out of the next portal. This is what I like to do with my portals. Just place it near. So first portal usually goes towards the enemy deployment zone. Second portal goes to where my units are. So I have a chance to put one unit through if I want to. And normally this is close to where most of my units are to allow me for flexibility. Yeah, then in his turn he moves up, as you can see. So he flanks my Barbarian Chief with his Plague Disciples, his just unit of 10, 200 points. He's gonna wreck the shit out of it. And he shoots with this Plague Catapult against my warrior unit. One of them hits and kills off 6 of the guys. So that's also going great. He kills the Barbarian Chief on the chariot very easily. And yeah, at this point in the game, the Dreadmills are still alive, both of them. With some lucky, with the Jezreels he got a bit lucky and he shot off the other chariot, which I desperately needed to remove the other Dreadmill. So basically everything's going bad. The Warrior Knights to the top right get removed by the unit of Plague Disciples without suffering any wounds themselves. Yeah, I am getting to the point where I'm quite frustrated with Vermin Swarm, yeah. I didn't play it out perfectly fine because, well, as I already said, I don't feel like I had the aggressiveness in my army to be able to just fully put it in and choke him, metaphorically, with my models. Yeah, so I tried to come up with a solution where I put my Great Weapon Warriors on the flank, because only his Vermin Demon and his Plague Brotherhood can see them there. And I have great weapons, I have Zealot's Banner, so I'm 7 wide, I have 28 attacks on him, which I think should be enough. And the Forsworn, they just move up, because, well, they are in quite an okay position, and I expect to remove one of the Dreadmills, the left Dreadmill, in this turn. The Warriors actually mop it up, and I charged in the Barbarian Horsemen on the flank of the Plague Disciples, just because I had a small chance of breaking them and running them down, because they have light troops, they don't have ranks, they don't have steadfast. So with 3 Barbarian Horsemen with paired weapons and steeds, if I do survive the Toxic hits that I get at initiative 10, which is also just... Anyway. If I do survive those, I have a decent chance of killing enough guys of his to force a panic check, a break check. And yeah, I might just break him, because he still has leadership 9 of the Vermin, yeah. Seeing this battle back, yeah, I'm not a fan of Vermin Swarm once again. I'm definitely not a fan. especially with the matchup that I have. It's incredibly tough. It's incredibly bad because every single combat unit that I have to sacrifice is very expensive to me. And yeah, he has such a combat potential with just such shitty units. It's come on, a unit of 10 Plague Disciples is 200 points. Come on, what are we doing? What? My Chimera is also 200 points. Sure, it's a little bit more mobile because it can march 20 inches instead of 12 inches in any direction, but it has half the wounds. It has just half the attacks. It doesn't do any toxic. Just I'm gonna stop this. Stop to talk about negatively about Vermin Swarm. um, but I'll still say that I find it preposterous the way it, or at least against warriors, how it seems to be specifically tuned to take on this army. It's preposterous. Yeah, so I sacrifice apparently my units of warriors with halberds. I can't go anywhere else. I can't flee with them afterwards, so they're just fucked. On the top right, my unit of warriors with great weapons. They take a charge of the Vermin Demon and the Plague Disciples. Yeah, I figured that should go okay. And then in his magic phase, he gets the well, he either gets scrying off or he gets the +2 offensive defense off. I opt to go to allow him to get the scry, the plus offense and defense off, whilst I should have gone for the scrying probably. Combined between the Vermin Demon and the Plague Brotherhood, he manages to kill 8 models of me. And I with my, I don't know how many, I believe I had 16, yeah, 16 attacks on the Plague Brotherhood and another 10 on the, or 12 on the Vermin Demon. I managed to do a total of 7 wounds. Yeah, so that's also quite bad. It should have been a bit higher, but even then, if it had been a bit higher, then the next round he would just have killed all of the rest of the guys. Yeah. 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 So by this point in the battle, I realized that I indeed should have just hidden in the corner, just waited for the game to be over. Because I had some ruins, I could protect myself from some shooting. I had a hill I could hide behind. And my army is small enough to allow me to hide with my entire army behind the hill and in the ruins. And then I could have just let him come, put 4 portals down, see what happened, go for the draw. And yeah, call it a day. Basically play a game in half an hour because you don't move. Yeah, it's the most interesting game ever. Yeah, so on a tournament I would have definitely done that. Mostly also because I'm fed up with playing against Vermin Swarm. And that might not sound very sportive, and I'm aware of that. So I kind of feel bad of that myself, but well, the game should be fun for both players, right? And right now, well, I'm just continuing to play this game because I think that is what you normally should do with a game. And you learn. Well, normally I learn most from games where I am presented some kind of interesting challenge. By now I figured that the challenge wasn't that interesting anymore because, well, it didn't really matter what I did. And I still believe that I was right at that it didn't matter in any way what I did with my models, more or less. So I still managed to get a couple of points here and there by killing a unit of Plague Disciples. But in the end, yeah, I believe in the end I only get 1 unit of Plague Disciples and a Dreadmill, and that's it. Yeah, so that's kind of equal to the first round Giant that my opponent got. Yeah. Yeah, so also there were some places where I wasn't particularly lucky, so that also combines to the greater game. But yeah, they try to solve it with the 5+ ward save against toxic attacks for Warriors of the Dark Gods, but it really doesn't scale up to what the Vermin Swarm can do to you. But well, partly it's also because of my army. My army is definitely not designed to take on Vermin Swarm. Because the Vermin Swarm have a higher agility on the charge than me. He has the magic to back it up. And I don't know with Warriors if you can get some agility improving spells. I don't believe so. Because you just have Evocation, Alchemy, mostly. I don't think so. Yeah, the Helmor also dies to the Dreadmill that still survived. So my mission for this game was to destroy both Dreadmills. Well, that didn't happen in the end. But my Doomlord and 1 for Sworn are still on the table, so maybe I'll manage to still get a win out of this, right? Yeah, so the Doomlord, he decides to go out of the unit to dodge the Vermin Demon. Because the Vermin Demon has AP 10, I have Dusk Forged, which allows me to reroll my armor saves, which is my main protection for my Doomlord. And the Vermin Demon doesn't care rat shit about that. So in goes the Dreadmill. The Dreadmill also has AP 10, so well, we'll see how that goes. But first we have the Plague Disciples that get to smack at my Lord. So they have 6 toxic hits. They wound me twice with AP 10. I don't get my ward save of 5+. And then the rest of the Plague Disciples also still deal another wound because they have 6 attacks with Battle Focus, Hatred, so they hit my Toughness 5 character with Defensive 6. Still about 6 times, 3 wounds, and I fail one of them. So I get 3 wounds in total of a unit that's worth half my points of my Doomlord. Oh my god. Yeah, so the Doomlord then gets killed by the Dreadmill, whilst he did 2 wounds to the Plague Brotherhood. And at this point it's the end of the game. So in the end, the Warriors of the Dark Gods got completely crushed off the table. This wasn't any surprise to me really, especially when you're facing models that get to strike before you strike and after you strike, and remove models in excess of the capacity of your units basically. But the secondary objective wasn't scored by the Vermin Swarm, so I still have a moral 3 points. It's not that I personally dislike my opponent in this game, I just personally dislike the army list that he brought. And I think it's a game that we should never repeat again, because, well, we know the outcome, and on a tournament I'm going to be also very passive in playing this matchup, because in this way it wasn't a matchup that I could enjoy in any way. The Barbarian Chief also should have been able to use his Weirdstone, and that's one of the early turning points of the game already. Because I believe that if you manage to take off the Dreadmills, you manage to get a lot of board control over this army. But the way it went, yeah, it just went bad in all kinds of different places, in all kinds of different ways. So I hope to never repeat this experience again. But anyway, that's normally what you evaluate after a full loss, right? Okay, see you on the next one.